if cannabis was so bad, I wouldn't be as active as a brother that I am and involved in my community with the people that I'm involved if I was that.
Nemo.
What's up?
Are you texting, bro? What are you texting for right now?
Sorry. Joey texted me. He asked me if you were still here.
I am still
here.
here.
Bro, you're famous, bro.
Man. My anxiety is like through the roof right now trying to figure all that out.
We get your autograph?
No. Hey, bro, we had a milestone this week.
Yes, we did.
100 subscribers.
Dang, yes.
100 subscribers.
Yeah, we did.
Come on.
In a month?
Yeah, probably a little over a month.
A little over a month.
And TikTok is well over 1,200 followers now. So it's growing steadily as long as we keep putting out the content. But yeah, big deal.
I love it, man.
Yeah, it's awesome. So we have a really cool guest today. Yes. I'm excited.
I was excited when you told me who this was. I was like, ooh, this is a really good one.
I know it's like, well, we're going to get into it. The conversation is going to be good.
Good.
So yeah, without further ado, I want to introduce our guest today. Now my phone will unlock. But this guest is a dream builder. He's a pastor and he's a cannabis advocate. Help me welcome my uncle, Victor Calderon. Yeah.
Hey guys, thank you so much for having me on here.
Yeah, absolutely. For those that don't know you, you're my uncle.
Yeah.
You are a pastor, obviously. Just tell us a little bit about yourself. Like I just introduced you to Nemo a little bit ago.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just tell for the people that don't know you just a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. Well, like, as you said, I'm your uncle by marriage.
Yeah.
And I thank God that we've crossed paths because, sometimes you don't know who's going to be in your family. Sometimes we don't get to choose who's in your family, but it's awesome when you have other people who are of like thinking, like-minded, progressive, and more than anything, who are also God-fearing. And I think to me, that's one of the things that I value the most, is the fact that I've been raised in church all my life, when we immigrated from Mexico. Mm-hmm. And then when you come to the U.S., you struggle, you do whatever you have to and whatnot. And we grew up as seasonal farm workers, and I didn't want to stick around at home, after high school. So I took off to college, and that's where I learned a lot about life, and I had the freedom to do whatever I wanted. I did a lot of stuff that I can honestly tell you that I don't regret. Those are just experiences I had to go through that brought me through some humbling moments in life. But in the progress, of just going through life, I learned about cannabis, and that wasn't one of my drugs of choice in any way, shape, or form, when I went to college, because it was one of those things that put you down to sleep, and I'd be asleep by 9:30, 10 o'clock at night on a college weekend. And I'm like, no, my friends are talking about the night before, how wild it was. And I'm like, when did this happen? Well, you were asleep, So I was like, man, maybe I should get off the pipe. I shouldn't be doing that anymore. And, and that's how I got introduced to cannabis, through friends and whatnot. Yeah. And then not knowing later on in life that I would use it as a medical part of my health. I'm actually a former pastor. I'm not pastoring right now, even though I am a leader to a lot of people in the community that still follow me and still look for my leadership and whatnot.
Yeah.
But I've been, for a while there, I was struggling whether I was going to come out or not with the fact that I was using cannabis. Mm-hmm. Back in 2009, I was diagnosed with having leukemia. Oh, wow. And it was one of those things that I did everything the doctors asked me to do, and that's one of the things that I don't know if we're going to talk about now or whatnot, but that's what makes me who I am today. I'm also known as the Cannabis pastor in my community, which is kind of weird because a lot of people think, well, how is it that you come from a Pentecostal oneness background, ultra conservative or conservative, to now talking to people about cannabis, and you do it in a way that it's more receptive, but it's because I also have the education behind it. I've been using it for 11 years. Even when I was a pastor, I was using it, and you may say, well, how is it that you can be doing that? Didn't you believe in God? Couldn't God heal you? I believe in God, and I believe in the power of healing and miracles, but I also believe that healing, when it comes to a miracle, it's for the unbelievers. It's not so much for the believers. I believe a miracle is for somebody that doesn't believe in God,
Wow.
and when that miracle happens,
That's good.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I want to definitely talk about, your battle and your journey with obviously leukemia and kind of everything there. But tell me a little bit about I know a lot of people don't know you from in our,
In our circle,
our channel, on our circle, right? Our network. Yeah. Just tell me about your background in ministry and all that. Like, were you raised in church?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yes, I was raised in church all my life. My dad was a deacon, and then he was a minister in the church. I have a brother who's a pastor, who's a bishop of the organization in the state where we're at. And then I have another brother who's also a pastor. My mom raised 5 kids, and 3 of the 4 boys have been pastors and ministers and had ministry. It's my sister has been married to men who are in the ministry and whatnot. And my other brother, the one that is not in the ministry, he's a leader. Like people follow him. So this has been a part of our life. And the fact that I gave my life to God when I was 13, and I knew that at that time I was excited to serve God and be in church and whatnot. But I also had issues with peer pressure and stuff at school, in middle school, then you're going into high school and stuff like that. So, I've struggled with, as you can say, our own demons, through this life period and whatnot. But I've always known that I was a leader. My mom always prayed, that God would put God-fearing men and godly men in my life, in my career and whatnot. And, it happened like that. My mom's prayers got answered, and all through life, I've always had good God-fearing men. I even had a good friend of mine in college that was very God-fearing. He was like an All-American football player and whatnot. And, these were the people that, when I was in school, who helped me come out of, my slumber, my down moments, of being in that rut. And, that's what makes me who I am today. These people these men that came into my life in different chapters or different seasons of my life, that's what really, brought me to who I am today as a man. Their experiences, their times that they've been there with me, just being there with me through the hard moments when I was a young teenager or a college student. I had good men that encouraged me to not give up, to not quit, to not be that guy that goes to school and quits and comes back and says, you didn't belong there, that type of stuff, but yeah.
Yeah. So I guess you mentioned it a little bit ago when you were kind of explaining like your time in college, like you were asleep at 9:30 when everyone else was going out. How early, or what was your like exposure to cannabis, like in college? Like, were you always smoking, like in high school or anything like that? Or
in high school we didn't, because we went to, we were like ongoing churchgoers, and we went to church 5-6 times a week, sometimes 2-3 times a day. So, if you come from that similar back, we used to fall asleep under the pews and on the pews, and, so that's the background. That's my life that I come. So when I left high school, I left all that there,
Gotcha.
And when I went to college, it's like, man, I got to go and find out about myself and who I am and whatnot. And it wasn't easy, it was hard for me to sin, to be honest with you, without having guilt. It was hard for me to enjoy partying because it was always guilt. Yeah. I can honestly tell you that there wasn't a time that I partied that I didn't party with guilt.
Wow. That's good.
I was never I always knew that. And then I had some people, call me out. When I went to a bar one time, a complete stranger called me out and said, you don't belong in here. What are you doing in here? So it was always these things that God was messing with me. So my experience with cannabis was through an older friend of mine who said, Vic, you need to just chill, you need to relax. But my experience was that I would fall asleep. So I didn't know that there was a way that you could handle that and control that. Because you did smoke it or you didn't smoke it. Because if you did smoke it, you were going to get tired and sleepy, or you were going to get hungry with the munchies, and stuff like that. So, those were things that, that was a good way for me to put on weight in college, because I went to college very scrawny looking. I was like 6 foot and only 145 pounds. So like the more I smoked, the hungrier I got, and I was building up and bulking and stuff like that. And that's how, but I thought all cannabis was like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, what was you said you didn't belong like in the party scene. I'm sure that's like drinking. I'm sure that's doing all that.
Yeah.
What was your thought process when you got introduced to cannabis? Was it much of the same, like that stigma of this is sin, or what was that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at first it was like, because it was always, told to us, you don't want to, so-and-so has a son who's a marihuano, right? He's the pothead, and the marijuano. So like being, so anybody that would do it or you were associated with it, you were a marijuano, you were a pothead. And I was just like, man, that's not the image that I want to portray.
Sure.
Yeah. So it's like, because it was looked down upon, so it was something that I didn't want to share with people.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to tell them that that's what I was doing. And even in the college, some people, if you hang out with certain crowds, they're not too fond of you smoking weed.
Yeah.
Whether because you'll have Christians in college, that'll drink, alcohol and not call that a sin. But if you're smoking weed, that's a sin. Or if you're having premarital sex, they do everything else except the premarital sex, so they don't, be,
choosing.
Yeah.
Sin is a sin no matter what.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was my background in college, but I knew eventually that would have to stop.
Yeah.
When
did all that kind of shift for you?
I think in the summer of my college, or like my last year when I graduated from college, and I was like coming back home, like the prodigal son. Okay, I'm kind of done partying. I'm gonna go back home to my city and go make a difference with my education and my knowledge. And I'm not doing drugs anymore. I was still doing some drinking and whatnot, but not to the extremes. So I had to calm down because I was going back home.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah,
I mean, I kind of want to segue into the portion of, when your battle with leukemia kind of started. Like when did you find out, like how long ago? And
yeah,
just kind of take us through that journey of what that was like.
I found out in 2009 that I had leukemia, but I was misdiagnosed like 3 or 4 different times in the previous years. So I'd probably been battling leukemia since 2006. Without knowing, and being given all the prescription drugs that I was given, Percocet, Oxycontin, you name it. And I had it, codeine, liquid codeine. I had every drug at my fingertips that I could possibly get from my doctor if I wanted, because of the pain, discomfort, and stuff that I was going through in 2006 through 2009. And I'm still pastoring the church at this time, a growing Spanish and English church. But the way these other drugs made me feel was just like, with hallucinations and stuff like that I was like, man, I can't be doing that. Mm-hmm. When I get diagnosed in 2009, they got to do bone marrow biopsies and whatnot. And, the first bone marrow biopsy they did came back empty. It was an 8-inch needle that they stuck in my back, through my side here. And the process is painful, if you've never drank a wine or, if you never had a corkscrew or anything, that's the same sound that my bones were making as they were trying to get some bone marrow out. And then the doctor says, we didn't get a sample out, so we're going to have to do another one. We're going to have to do with a bigger needle. We have a size 10 or a size 12 inches, which one do you want? I said, to not have to do it 3 times, let's go with the biggest one you got. Let's go with the 12er, and so we had to redo it. And then they just got maybe about just about an inch worth of a sample, that's what they use. And then they said, about a day and a half later, they said, Mr. Calderon, you have hairy cell leukemia, and that's something that you're going to have to, live with, but not knowing that when you have that, you can do chemo, which I did immediately. When we found out that I had leukemia, they said, we're going to have to do chemo, and because you don't have any blood in your system, you're also going to need a blood transfusion. So I walk into the hospital. I should have already been dead somewhere, falling, because I didn't have any blood in my system. and that's why they couldn't find or get the bone marrow sample at first. So when they do this blood transfusion, I had 2 liters done, per night, followed up by chemo, like another 2 liters of chemo. So, and that's what I would go through. I did that for 6 days, blood transfusion followed by chemo, blood transfusion followed by chemo.
What was your emotion when they first told you, like, hey, this is, you've been struggling for 3 years and this is finally what we've, discovered? What was your emotion like?
Well, actually my first reaction was that I flatlined. Okay. I didn't, like, as soon as she said, you have cancer. Yeah. All I heard was that beep, that flatline noise. And all I could see was just her lips moving.
Oh, that's
cool. And that's where I made up my mind, Aaron, when that beep, that flatline happened, I believe in all the people that I have asked that are still survivors, they have had the same experience. When they said, when you found out that you had cancer, what was your first reaction? They said, I heard a beep noise. And it's that flatline, and that's where I made up my mind that I wasn't going to die.
Wow.
Because some people will let that flatline, make that decision for them and says, you know what, you're dying or you're going to die, And as soon as I heard that flatline, it's like my life just went before me. And I said, man, I got to see my kid graduate from high school. I got to see him get married. I said, so I got to fight, I got to do whatever it takes to keep me alive by any means necessary. Mm-hmm. And you know what I mean by any means necessary?
That will, yeah.
Okay. So by any means necessary is you don't give a hoot about what people think, about how you go about your medication, about this, you by any means necessary.
Yeah.
Some people don't get that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially you being a father and a husband, was that, so that was the one thing that like drove you the entire time was your children, you still have a lot of life to live to just fight through it. 'Cause a lot of people give up. They hear the word cancer and they're like, okay, well, my life is over. But you decided to keep fighting, pressing on. Was it your family or was it also tied into your faith in God at that moment?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking, and it was the fact that I knew that God wasn't through with me yet. And I said, and my daughter hasn't seen the best of me yet because my daughter was only 5-6 years old at the time. And my daughter didn't want to go to school, bro. She didn't want to go to school in the mornings, or whatever. She didn't want to leave my bedside because she didn't think she was going to see me when she came back. So that's how bad I was. That's what my appearance, I had lost so much weight, and that I'd look like death, perhaps to my daughter, that if she would leave me, she wasn't going to come back to her dad. And I would tell her, mommy, go ahead and go to school, and when you get out of school, I'm still going to be here.
Yeah. Wow.
I'm still going to be here. So she would kiss my hand and she'd always say, I love you, daddy. I say, I love you more, and that's what kept me going. You know what, bro? And then the other thing was also, man, I lost sight in both of my eyes, cause I got blood clots in both retina of my eyes. So I couldn't see for like 7-8 months, I couldn't see. So, I mean, it's like I was going so fast, but God, I knew God was putting me through this. It was it was one of those moments that, that you have, you read about Bible scripture, you read about, man, and then you just, Job was a man that was just righteous in the eyes of God. He was a good man. And when God, told Satan, have you considered my servant, Job? Have you considered him, try him and he's going to show you that he's still going to be faithful to me. I felt like I was having one of those experiences in the time that I was going through this. That's what I was going through. It's like that season in my life that God was going to launch me into something greater. You know what I mean? But you first have to be tried. And when God said, have you considered my servant Victor? Have you considered him? Go and touch his body for a bit and see what he's going to do.
Wow.
That's good. I mean,
you know.
said something I was understanding the point you were trying to make by saying by any means, you know,
I love that.
and I'm sure you have, like you said, they gave you every single drug, they gave you chemo, they gave you everything,
Everything,
right?
yeah.
And you didn't want your family, your daughter, to see you probably at your weakest points, right? And you didn't want that continue.
Yeah.
So by any means, obviously, you were willing to try anything. And I think that's where probably cannabis was introduced to you, or how did that whole start again? You know, you were already introduced to it in college, but how did that, you know,
The
re-enter
medical
your
side
life?
of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, check this out, man. This is a good one because my phlebotomist, Shayna, I'll never forget her name because she's the one that really said, I mean, she was the one that was getting all my blood every day for like the first month. My blood was getting drawn once a day because they were having to get it tested for my blood count and whatnot. And then it became once every 2 weeks. I mean, once every 2 days and one every 4 days. So then it was once a week and then once every 2 weeks. So Shayna was saying, sweetheart, I'm glad that you're here, but you're not doing any better. You still look really thin. You don't look like you're making any progress. Would you consider another alternative, for your health?
Mm-hmm.
And would you consider an alternative medicine? I said, at this point, I'll try anything.
Yeah.
And she says, my sister is battling something similar to you, and she's got cancer, but she's eating and she's gaining weight and she's doing better and all this and that. And she says, if you're open to it, I can send you information, or you can look up this person and this study and this study and this stuff. And then she says, and the University of Washington is doing a study, for leukemia patients and people who would want to see if that would work for them. So if you would consider, just think about it, read it, whatnot. So I researched it for about 3 months, bro, before I even got on it.
Wow.
And before I even considered. So I did my work, and I have my background. My bachelor's degree is in psychology, and my master's is in education as well, with the focuses or the emphasis in counseling psychology. So I'm not a dumb person. I'm not somebody who was, I was born at night, but not last night, So, and I've always been big on studies and research studies because I believe in that, when, the majority says something, then there could be something good that come out of that, so that's how I was taught in college, and that's something that I applied to my life, so having done everything now, to this point, I've been private about all of this, because I don't tell people what medications I had been on for 3 or 4 years, and then prior to the diagnosis and all that. I didn't share any of that with anybody. That's my personal life.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm, going through something like that, what I started thinking was like, how many other people in the churches have not had to go through the same thing and have been using all these prescription drugs, from their doctors that they have trusted, but are still not getting better. Okay. So when Shayna talks to me and I do the research and whatnot, and I said, I want to be a part of that study, and in 2010, the state of Washington had made cannabis legal for medical patients. So if you went to your primary care physician, to your doctor, you can go get a permit that would allow you to use cannabis for medical reasons. And that was accepted in the state of Washington, but you had to have a medical, permit or, from your doctor, who's signing off and says, I'm treating him for this and that, or to whatever reason. But cancer was one of those diagnoses that was allowed for cannabis, to be used medically. So I said, I'm going to get on that, so yeah.
Did you, was it via pills or was it actual like smoking? Because I know I personally know someone in my family who's dealing with a certain issue with their bones, I believe, and they take a pill that's actually cannabis, but it helps them with obviously all the pains and all the so on and so forth. You would know a lot more than I would when it comes to that, but I know they take a certain pill every day that helps them with their situation.
Yeah, everybody's body is different, and it's going to react different to how you take it, whether you take it as an edible orally, or you take it through a pill, or you use a tincture, or if you smoke it, or if you dab it, or if, just whatever your method is of taking that's going to respond the fastest to your discomfort, Mine was actually through edibles and through smoking it, through vaping it and smoking it, and through edibles has been my primary way of doing it, and through tinctures, CBD oil and tinctures that have THC in it as well. At first I was like, what does this all mean? But I'm very grateful that I had, like a naturopath doctor who had about 30 or 40 years of experience with cannabis as well, helping other people. And I said, man, if this lady has been able to help thousands, like under the radar, then I want to be a part of how she can help me naturally as well. So my friend Shayna was the one that did the whole introduction part, and then she started connecting me to different resources and whatnot that her sister had. And then I got connected to her sister as well. And then now I became an advocate as well for cannabis. And I became an instructor at one of our local community colleges. They've asked me to teach for them because of my experience, with it personally. Yeah. And now I'm able to, I got certified with the state to be a medical marijuana consultant because of my experience.
Wow.
How long have you been doing that now? When did you start teaching for that?
It's been about a year now.
Okay.
About a year now. So that was just recently introduced through one of my friends who brought it to the state of Washington. He actually introduced it to Congress and the whole legislation about the whole medical side of it. And he and I got connected, and a year ago, I became the first Spanish speaking instructor of cannabis in the country, Latino. Wow. And been teaching out of UNLV, online, a few other colleges here in the state of Washington, online, and just sharing it with them, how they can use it as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's crazy.
That's actually pretty cool. Yeah.
So I guess kind of after you started, using it for medical use and stuff and became an advocate and all that, how quick of like a recovery and like, did you, I guess body wise, did you feel a lot different after you started using it, or what was that?
When I first started using it, here's the thing that people need to know about doing chemotherapy. Okay, chemotherapy is going to slowly kill you, and people don't know that, because what chemotherapy does is that it starts taking your energy away, and it starts taking your hunger and your appetite away. Okay, so then you don't want to eat, you don't feel like eating, and all you want to do is really sleep. But that's in the chemo wants to stay in your system. So I did things a little different. The doctor says just go home and rest and No, I wouldn't go home and rest. I would walk and pace back and forth in my room so I could sweat and get the chemo out of my body as fast as I could. And my mom was there to cook for me. She was making caldo de pollo, chicken soup, and making all this type of thing, siete mares and all these soups that she was just making to give me energy, to give me strength. So as I would smoke the cannabis, I would get hungry. Now, I had tried other methods, but didn't work for me. I wouldn't get hungry, and the pain wouldn't go like that within 5 to 10 minutes. That's why the edibles at first didn't work for me, because if you're going to take an edible, it's going to take about an hour and a half, maybe an hour to an hour and a half to 2 hours to begin to work in your system. And if I have pain, I want my pain to go now.
Yeah.
So that's why, I would do vape or smoke it. So as soon as I would inhale and release it, 2 minutes later, my migraine, my anxiety or whatever, because I used to get real bad anxiety from the needles, because they would come and poke me every day. I got anxiety. So now when I see needles, and they said, you got to go get this vaccination, I was like, man, that's what my body is traumatized.
Yeah.
For sure.
So having done the chemo and whatnot, I've noticed that the better I eat, when I'm hungry, the more nutrition that gives my body versus going through chemo again and it killing all my good cells, all my bad cells, and just killing me slowly. So that's where you have to decide, what price am I willing to pay to get better? Do I want, a more natural way that like people are going to frown upon it? Like Christians, they don't understand the medical use of cannabis until they speak to me. I feel like, I feel like it's the fact that I have the Cannabis Alliance here in Seattle,
Yeah.
that supports what I do. You know, I mean, when I first came into the Alliance as the Cannabis pastor, they didn't even know who I was. I said, well, I call myself the Cannabis pastor, and they loved it.
Yeah.
You know, now they have me as an advocate to the an advocate to the evangelical community here in the state of Washington. So if any evangelical community wants to know more about the medical use of cannabis and how their community or their church people can make the switch from opiates to something more natural, then they reach out to me, and then we can give them a whole panel instruction and some education.
So it obviously hearing what you're saying, why would you recommend someone to get off of what you will go get right at like a CVS, right? You know, when here's a prescription, go get that. Why would you recommend the cannabis side over using basically what your doctor gives you to go, you know, take 50 pills a month? That's going to make, according to them, feel better.
Well, one is for personal reasons. Is I found out that I had cirrhosis of the liver, and that I had kidney issues. You know, well, it's because I was taking all these drugs that they were giving me that was beginning to have effects on different organs in my body. That then they were saying, well, we need to give you this so you can, you know, so it can help you from the cirrhosis. And I'm just like, so now you got me as a lab rat, you know, and that's what I became to. And that's, you know, and I associate having a medical chart with the same thing as having a criminal record. Once they already see your chart, you know, that you've been in a hospital and you've been on this medication, that medication there, you become a lab rat to them, you know, and they're keeping track of all the statistics of all of this, but they're just not letting you know. Same thing with when you have a criminal record. When they see that you've already been in the system, they want to keep you in the system. Mm-hmm. So when you are kept in the system, that means the doctors are still employed because you're still part of their system, their network. You know, now I go to my doctors and I only go to him when, you know, just to find out what's wrong with me, so I can take care of, you know, doing what I got to do in a more natural, organic way. Yeah. You know, and he's very receptive to that. He knows that I'm stubborn. He knows that he has drugged me up. He knows he's given me everything. Till back in 2010, I said, no more drugs, you know, no more lab work, you know. And in 2018, which was my last diagnosis, you know, my oncologist called me and he said, you know, Victor, you know, you need to come to the hospital tomorrow and we need to get you started on chemo as soon as possible. And I said, Dr. Chen, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to do chemo anymore. I'm doing what I got to do, you know, over here. And I still have faith in God and I believe God's going to heal me using cannabis. So
that's good. What's been the response of others when you do tell them, like, this is what I do? And they obviously know that some may know that you're either a pastor now or you were a pastor at a moment.
Especially the circle we've come from. Yeah.
But he would know obviously more. Yeah. So like, what's the response? Because I mentioned it to a couple people that I know and they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, he's, you know, he was, you know, a pastor, and they're like, but cannabis? And like, so I wanted to know, like, from you.
Yeah, well, I could be a hydrocodone doctor, you know, Oxycontin doctor, you know, or pastor, you know. But there's a lot of pastors that won't tell you that drugs that they're addicted to. You know, you tell them, you know, they're on this kind of diabetic drug or whatever, and then, you know, come to find out that, you know, I have found out that through research, you know, most people who take diabetic drugs, you know, later on in life have dementia, and I'm just like, man, you know, so it's like stuff that we have to think about and stuff. So then I take that into consideration and I tell people, okay, this is my story. You know, this is my story. This has been, you know, the shoes that I've walked on and have been my shoes, nobody else's, you know. But what makes it okay to take something that has, you know, in like, take, for example, in Oxycontin or in Percocet, you know, that have cocaine, that have methamphetamines, that have the same stuff that what we call druggies on the street, homeless people have, that in their drugs they're using and you're using too. And I've seen pastor friends of mine, you know, in the circle of friends that I've run. I've been the national youth president for the United Pentecostal Church in the Spanish division. I've been, you know, a leader in the state of Washington, you know, but you know, it's mind-boggling, you know, to me that as long as you're wearing a white cape, you know, it's acceptable, you know. And I went back to my my naturopath doctor, and I told her, can you put on your white cape so I can show people that you are a doctor too, and that you wear a white cape, and I can believe you and I can trust you, because that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Wow.
And medical doctors are trained to keep the whole pharma in business by giving them people, drugs, and they don't get better, they get worse. So when people have looked down upon me, because there have been some people that said, bro, whatever you cannabis, that's blasphemy. You shouldn't even call yourself a cannabis or associate yourself with pastorships in any way, shape, or form. And I'm like, by the simple fact that you're talking that way lets me know that there's a demon inside you. So you can't judge me, because you choose to take an opiate that your doctor in a white cape prescribed to you to give you 50 of them that you can't, you don't even make it through the month because you take more than that.
Yeah.
Wow.
And my doctor gives me my prescription, and I stay within my limits. And listen, I'm a father, of a 5-year-old that I'm very active with every day. I work out, I'm running my own home-based business. I have a marriage. We have a healthy marriage, so all these things. If cannabis was so bad, I wouldn't be as active as a brother that I am and involved in my community with the people that I'm involved. If I was that.
Yeah.
Wow, that's good.
No, that's really good.
Wow.
I know, I've talked to my dad a ton about this, just because I know you guys run in the same circle and
Yeah,
connected, kind of the same advocates for the same things.
mm-hmm.
I obviously know where we come from, and what the thoughts are when it comes to that. Like, some people think it's sin, some people don't. I just think it always gets caught up in why there was a stigma behind it, just because of the abuse that was put on.
Absolutely.
Anything else, like you just mentioned. And I think that's where people get like the taboo part of it, whether it's alcohol, smoking, whatever it is. It's like people abused it, and it was never meant to be abused. It's something natural that helps people's bodies, and people, feel good if they're dealing with whatever it is. Do you feel like that's where it comes from? It's just like, it's not that it's sin, because it's not. I don't think it is personally. Other people have their own ideas about that. And you can start diving into scripture and having those debates all you want. It's not what I want to do, because I don't. But do you think that's where it comes from? That stigma of just like, because people abused it for so long, and then whether they're, recovering addicts or whatever it is.
Absolutely. Check this out, man. When my grandmother, I ain't gonna tell you which one of my grandmothers, because I might give it away, but one of my grandmothers, found out that I was doing what I was doing. She said, "Ay, mijo, when you get some, during harvest time, when you want to throw away some of the leaves, save some for me, because I'm going to put it in my alcohol, rubbing alcohol, and I'm going to use it for my arthritis, my rheumas, So this was just my grandma, either on my dad's or my mom's side, it doesn't matter. That was just 2 generations ago, So, they were using it, when cannabis first came to the United States, it was brought by Latinos, by Mexicans, and they weren't smoking on the job, but they were smoking it, to go to sleep at night after they got home from their heavy days at work. And that's how they brought it to the US. So it was used to just, relax and calm down, and sure, with time, we've abused it. Mm-hmm. Humanity will abuse anything. The Bible even talks about, that he created every creature and every plant and everything that had seed. Let me tell you what, cannabis has a lot of seed, so he created all this, but when man gets his hand into it, he corrupts it.
Yeah.
Like God made, the coca leaves too, the cocaine and all that, but we abuse it. When I flown out to other countries, they've having to give me tea from the leaves, to calm me down because of the, the elevation. Yeah. But we don't talk about that, here, but they do that in South America. If we were to talk about that here and they did this, like, oh, that's a drug. Well, when you want to talk about drugs, let's talk about Coca-Cola. That's a drug, and Pepsi and all that kind of stuff. That's stuff, yeah, our cell phones can be, get us connected to just the whole wiring process, So, I've learned to just better educate people or to educate those that are of like mind, but have not been taught, that are wanting to know, I need something more natural. Because let me tell you, from the folks and now pastors who know what I do, because they've seen where I was 11 years ago, and my spiritual father, I don't want to say his name on here, but the fact that I have a spiritual father at the caliber that I do, who knows where I've been from back in 2009 when I was like on my deathbed, to where I'm at today, and from him knowing that what I do is cannabis, and he supports what I do because he has seen me from taking all the drugs and all the stuff the medical doctors gave me to like me going on my own and finding a natural path and still being alive.
Yeah.
And I believe with all my heart and soul that God has allowed me to go through all that to bring about, something that's so taboo, but can still help a lot of people. Because I have right now, I have about 3 or 4 people that are on their deathbeds, one with blood cancer, like chemo, bone cancer, breast cancer, and prostate cancer, who have reached out to me and say, hey man, I heard that you about this. I said, man, you got to do the research. But if so, if you're more serious about it, then let's do a one-on-one and let's talk about how we can get you on your journey.
Facts. Yeah. I think you hit it on the head. I think a lot of it just comes down to education, especially people that are raised really conservative. Like we know a lot of people like that, obviously. I think it just comes down to ignorance and having a hard head and not wanting to listen because they've been told this is the way, forever. I think a lot of it just comes down to ignorance and just not getting educated about it. But yeah, that's awesome. Do you have any more questions from Nemo?
No, I think it's good, man. It kind of, cannabis. I use a few lotions for certain parts of my body that sometimes I get pain and it goes away immediately. So
I think he can tell you a little bit about some of those too.
I use some of the hemp lotions that obviously literally the picture is a weed plant. I've used them after certain things that I've done, and they really do help. My mom, she uses a lotion for her hands because they get swollen really quickly. Yeah, swelling goes down. So I don't see nothing wrong with using, so on and so forth, things that are going to help you medically.
Yeah. Even for me, I know we talked about it when you last came down about just because I have pretty decent anxiety levels. I feel like exercising helps me a lot, but when I'm not able to do that, I feel like everything kind of increases. So I've asked, I'm like, hey, would this help me? Taking a vape, would it help me? Eating a gummy at night, would it help me? And I've tried it just because I wanted to see if it helped me because I want to be able to sleep. I want to be able to, feel rested. I've chatted with you about it. I want to feel rested when I wake up and not my mind is running 1,000 miles per hour. And it's not for everybody. I didn't necessarily, like it, I might have just took too much just because I don't know anything about it. But I just remember not being it for me. And I think that could be a lot of other people too. Maybe it's not for everybody. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I don't think it is for everybody. I think it's for those that are willing to put in the time and work, because you have to, treat this like your own medical chart. Yeah. Always start low and then you work your way up. So that way you can find your sweet tooth is what we call it, so that if instead of taking 25 milligram gummy is going to be way too much for anybody who hasn't had any experience with marijuana, maybe you should start at 1 or 2 milligrams first, and then slowly but surely, do the increments, maybe 2 or 3 milligrams, but, I've had some people to say, Vic, I'll try it, but I don't think it's for me. And then they ended up liking it, and then those people who thought that they were going to like it was not for them, just how it made them feel out of control again, but they would go too hard. Yeah. And these are people who feel like they know their body best and whatnot. But I was like, this is something new to your body. Yeah. It starts slow, man. So for people who are struggling with anxiety, who have, anemic issues and stuff like that, it all comes down to the strain. People think that, all marijuana is the same, and it's not. There's different names for a reason, because they have different DNA that, that it comes from. And that's something that's important. A lot of people is like, no, all marijuana makes me go to sleep. Well, it's not true. There's some There's some people that struggle with anxiety who smoke the wrong kind of sativa because they say, I want a sativa. And that's just going to give you racing head thoughts and whatnot. And they're like, why do I have so much anxiety? It's like, well, it's because you shouldn't be on a sativa. You should probably be on a hybrid indica, with a little bit of sativa, but not as much. And that's what's causing the anxiety.
Yeah.
So a lot of people don't know these things, so the education behind it, again, like we talked about,
Right.
it's important, take the time.
No, I think that's perfectly said. I mean, we're going to put all your info in the description, and, if you ever had questions about it, I rather have had a conversation with you or, before I ever even thought about, I hope everyone does that. Like, have a conversation with somebody who knows something about it before you ever try something.
Yeah.
Whether you just have questions, maybe you don't want to try it. Maybe you have this thoughts in your mind, like we grew up with, of this is not okay. Talk to somebody like Victor or somebody educated about it, whatever that is for you.
Yeah. Man, you'd be surprised, Aaron. I had this one lady call me, a sister from the church who had seen some of my stuff on Facebook. He's like, man, is he really out on the cannabis field? Is he really? And I'm like, yeah, this is, on my Facebook. And she called me. She says, brother, I've been struggling with this in my spirit, but I don't want to be taking any anxiety pills from my doctors. And I said, don't. I said, there's an alternative to that. You can go to a pot shop and ask them, go to a medical pot shop that's, a shop that's medically endorsed. And you can talk to somebody there who has the endorsement and say, this is how I'm feeling. I need something that's going to calm me down and not give me all that. So when she did that, she says, but I don't want to feel guilty. I said, don't feel guilty. That's why God, has allowed you to call me, so we can talk about this and you not feel guilty about that in that sense. So she went to the store and got her thing. And I said, when your kids go to sleep, if you're going to take an edible or if it's that you're going to smoke it, do what you got to do, but don't do it around the children. So she did. Yeah. You know what, bro? She hasn't been the same since. She's been cool, calm, and collective. She's got 2 jobs. She's a single mother of 2, working on, she's doing things. She's, she's getting stuff done versus having the anxiety.
1,000%. Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard of any like horror stories, if that makes sense, of people that did it the right way. I've never heard it not work. You know, like I've heard 1,000 stories from my dad. I've even heard stories from you guys. Yeah, of just like it has helped so many people when they do it the correct way, not when it's abused, not when it's just like, something for partying, not anything like that. When it's used the correct way, the way it's intended. Like Paul says, like, guys, here I go with the pastor talk, but like Paul says, everything's permissible to you, but not everything's good for you. You know what I mean? So I think it comes with a level of discernment for that too. And I think that's right on the head with, it can really help a lot of people instead of, filling yourself with anxiety medication that just zonks you out, Yeah.
You see, when people start taking simple stuff over the counter, even like NyQuil, they say keep out of the reach of children and don't take too much of that and this and that, and that'll knock you out. But then, what are they taking it for? Versus an edible or versus a tincture from cannabis that,
Yep. 100%.
It's a preference.
Yeah. I'm with you.
It's a preference.
It's real good.
Do you have anything else for him?
Man, I think I might have to talk to him after.
Schedule on one.
Guys, that's the thing that a lot of people, and especially churchgoers, who don't know who to turn to, I want the community who's listening to feel comfortable enough to reach out to me. I'm not a doctor, but if you want to talk about it, if you live in the area where I live, and if you want to have an experience with it, and you're afraid about who you're going to be around, that's what I help people also do. I want them to feel comfortable, that they can be in my home, that they can come over and do an edible, they can do, whatever, do a vape and whatnot, that they can walk through the process and not feel like they're in any form of endangerment, so that we can see if it works for them. Or I can go into the people's homes as well and just walk them through, Or
even point them in a different direction with maybe some resources you have or whatever they need.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Anything you want to leave off on, or do you want to kind of mention?
No, guys, I appreciate you guys asking me to come on here. This has been very interesting. It's been fun. Yeah. And I hope the community who listens out there will also, just, have that conversation, have that conversation with your pastor. What's your pastor's point of view on it, and I really don't think that pastor should have a say so, on something that has been medically allowed. And I I don't think it's anybody's business but your own, you know, and I really feel that you got to do whatever you got to do by any means necessary to be a better you. And I'm not saying go out and do heroin and start doing crack, you know, I'm saying, you know, there's stuff that, you know, you've been already, you know, you've been going through it. And if you've been given something or you want to try another alternative, you know, that's more natural, more organic, man, just don't be afraid and feel free to reach out to me at any time.
Absolutely. Like I said, we're going to put Cannabis Pastor or Victor's information in the bio or in the description below. So if you have any questions for him, what do you prefer? Email, Instagram messages? What's easier for you?
Anything is fine. I mean, I will reply to wherever, you know, just wherever I get it first.
You got it. We'll put his email, we'll put his Instagram, his Facebook, anything, all of those outlets, we'll put them down below. But yeah, it's been a really cool conversation.
It's good. A lot of knowledge.
A lot of knowledge right there. So yeah, reach out to Victor, go follow him, check his page out, his website out. But thank you guys for listening. If you're still here, drop us a like, drop some comments down below. What do you think? And until next time, we'll catch you in the next one.
See y'all.
Guys.